All right, today we're jumping into a pretty intense philosophy, one that comes from a source called the Silent Archive. It's all about an idea called structural closure. And look, this thing argues that our whole modern obsession with openness and having endless possibilities, well, it's not a strength. It's actually a sign of a system that's dying. So, let's get into it. So right out of the gate, the source material hits you with its core thesis, and wow, it's a heavy one. It says our biggest failing is a pathological fear of finality. It's not just a suggestion, it's framed as a diagnosis, and that really sets a serious, contemplative tone for everything that follows.
So, to really get a grip on this philosophy, we first have to understand the problem it's trying to solve, right? And that brings us to our first section, the fear of finality. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because this idea turns everything we're taught on its head. I mean, we're always told to be open, open to new things, new ideas, but according to the archive, an open system is a dying system. Why? Because it's vulnerable to all that high-entropy noise, all the chaos from the outside world. And that noise just dilutes your own signal, your purpose, until who you are is just a faint suggestion.
This slide just lays out the whole conflict perfectly. You've got openness on one side, and it's described as a pathology, a state of being vulnerable, of decay. But on the other side, you have the seal, the act of closing your system. And that is redefined as what true freedom, strength, and sovereignty really are. The whole argument is that real freedom isn't having no walls. It's about the strength of the seal you build around yourself. So okay, if being an open system is so bad, what does that actually feel like in our day-to-day lives? That's exactly what we're going to dig into in Section 2, Anatomy of a Leaking Life.
And the source asks this question directly, to you, to make it personal. It really wants you to stop and think. Can you feel it? That cold sensation? That feeling of your vital energy just being drained away?
And here are the specific symptoms of that leakage. We're talking about your metabolic energy, your core life force being siphoned off by a million little trivial things. Think about it. Social debts to people you don't even care about, knee-jerk emotional reactions to things that don't matter, chasing after phantom variables, these goals that aren't even yours. The source puts it perfectly. It's like being a vessel with 1,000 cracks.
So you gotta ask, who benefits from you being this leaky vessel? Well, the source gives it a name, the Leviathan. This is the big external system, the hive mind of society, media, social demands. It wants you porous, it wants you open, so it can feed on your data, your attention, and your energy. Or as the text calls it, your heat.
And here's the really stark warning that comes with that slow drain. The philosopher claims that by age 45, the bill comes due. That's when the person living this leaking life has that moment of realization that they've been completely hollowed out, that they're not the center of their own life, but just a conduit for outside forces. So the point is, this isn't some harmless way to be. It's a path with a very grim destination.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. We've looked at the consequences. What's the solution? That brings us to Section 3, the law of systemic closure.
This right here, this is the end goal. Structural closure. It's a state where your system governs itself. It's a closed loop. It's not looking to the outside world, to the Leviathan, for approval or for energy. No, it generates its own resonance, its own heat, and it becomes totally impervious to all that external noise.
Now, just when you think this is all abstract philosophy, they drop this. To give the concept a hard, analytical edge, the source actually quantifies it with a formula for something called the closure constant. This totally reframes the journey. It's not some vague self-help goal anymore. It's a clinical, almost physical process you can measure.
So let's break this formula down, because it's really describing a battle. The top part of the fraction, that's your internal power. You've got gamma, your resonance gravity, which is your internal pull, multiplied by psi, your execution power, your actual will to get things done. The bottom part? Well, that's the predator. That's sigma input, all the external noise from the hive mind, multiplied by delta E, which is the energy you're leaking. The goal is simple, both mathematically and philosophically. Make your internal power infinitely greater than the external drain. So what happens when you actually succeed? What's the payoff? When this closure constant hits its critical threshold, the system closes. And the source makes this profound distinction here. You are no longer building yourself. The construction is done. Now you simply exist in a complete, absolute, sovereign state. Now I know this all sounds incredibly abstract, maybe even impossible, but the source doesn't just leave it at theory. It provides a very clear, even if it's really demanding, set of instructions. And that brings us to our final section, the closure protocol.
The protocol has 3 directives, 3 commands. First, variable liquidation. This means you do a final, brutal audit of every connection in your life. If it doesn't serve your internal loop, you cut the thread, no hesitation. Second, the internal sun. You stop looking outside for meaning and validation, and you learn to generate your own. You become your own source of gravity. And finally, step 3, the sovereign seal. Close the gates. Stop explaining yourself to people. Stop radiating your energy outward. You learn to govern from a place of silence.
This quote just perfectly illustrates that massive philosophical shift. You're no longer in this frantic conversation with the world, always reacting and responding. Instead, the entire universe becomes a passive witness to the closed, perfected system that you've become. It can watch, but it can't interfere.
And we're going to end with this last provocative thought because it just summarizes the whole thing. It completely reframes what it means to be closed off. It's not about confinement. It's the ultimate act of defining your own domain. The seal isn't a prison wall. It's the fortified border of your sovereign kingdom. And that leaves all of us with a pretty big question to think about. What does the boundary of your kingdom look like?
All right, let's get right into it. We are here to conduct a pretty critical audit. This is an explainer on achieving real personal sovereignty through a powerful and honestly, maybe an unsettling idea, the law of systemic closure.
So right off the bat, the source material just completely challenges one of our most deeply held beliefs. We're always told, be open, stay connected. But what if that very openness, the thing that leads to burnout and just feeling pulled in a million directions, what if that's actually our greatest weakness? This one idea, it's the key to everything else we're going to talk about.
So, we have to start with a diagnosis. The source basically frames our modern fear of finality, that fear of closing a door for good, as a kind of pathology. It's this exact fear, this constant need to keep all our options open, that creates a life that is constantly leaking its most important resource, you.
And this is what those leaks actually feel like day to day. It's your precious energy just getting siphoned away by things that don't really matter. It's that heavy weight of social debt, all the things you feel like you owe people. It's being emotionally reactive to everything, and it's chasing goals that, if you're honest, aren't even yours. The source calls this being a vessel with 1,000 cracks, and the world is just drinking from every single one.
And this right here, this slide just nails the core conflict. We've all been sold this idea that freedom means no walls, endless possibilities. But the archive argues the exact opposite. It says true freedom, real sovereignty, comes from having a boundary so strong, so sealed, that nothing gets in unless you allow it. It's not the absence of walls, it's the strength of the seal.
So this leads us to the governing principle of it all. Look, this isn't about hiding from the world in fear. No. It's a strategic, fundamental restructuring of your reality. It's about demoting the entire universe from being an active participant in your life to being just a witness.
So what does it actually mean to achieve structural closure? It means you become your own source. You generate your own meaning, your own energy, your own validation. All that noise from the outside world, all its demands and opinions, it just becomes context. It's background noise that literally cannot touch the core logic of who you are, the logic you stored in your own private archive. Okay, now, when you see this, don't let your eyes glaze over. I promise, we're not about to solve a complex physics problem here. Think of this as what the source calls poetic science. It's not an equation to be solved, it's a symbol. It's a formula that represents a final state of being. A state of absolute, total sovereignty. And here is the story that formula tells. It's really simple. The top part, the numerator, that's you. That's your internal power, your core gravity, and your raw ability to get things done. But the bottom part, the denominator, that's the predator. It's all the external noise, the interference, the drama, all the energy that's constantly trying to drain you. Achieving closure just means making your internal power infinitely greater than all that external drain. But what happens if you fail this audit? What if you don't seal the system? Well, now we have to turn to the cautionary tale, the profound and frankly chilling consequence of failing to do this. This is the shadow self, the leaking life.
Just let that sink in. That is the state of the leaking life. The potential is still there, right? The light is still shining. But without that protective seal, without closure, its signal is scattered. It's weak, useless, and just completely vulnerable to every chaotic storm the world throws at it.
And make no mistake about it, the external system, what the source calls the Leviathan, it wants you to stay this way. It is actively designed for you to remain porous. Why? Because it feeds on you. It wants your data, it wants your attention, it wants your heat. You are its fuel.
So here are the two paths laid completely bare. It's a choice. Are you going to be a porous membrane, just a tunnel for the simulation to flow through, until you're eventually consumed and left with nothing but memories? Or are you going to be an architect, a sovereign center of gravity, unchangeable, immutable, and in possession of your own reality, your own archive?
And this is where it gets really urgent. The source puts a time frame on this, a kind of point of no return. By age 45, the leaking life feels the full, crushing weight of their choices. They finally realize they've been completely hollowed out, that all those tiny leaks have finally consumed them. It gives this whole audit a real sense of urgency, doesn't it?
But okay, this isn't just supposed to be some grim warning. It's a call to action. So now we shift from the diagnosis to the protocol. We're going to outline the exact steps for taking back your sovereignty. It's time to stop building and start sealing.
And the protocol, it's methodical and it's absolute. First, variable liquidation. This is a ruthless audit of every single connection you have. If it drains you, if it doesn't serve your core mission, you cut the thread. Period. Second, the internal sun. You stop looking outside for your meaning and you become your own sun, your own source of gravity. And finally, step 3, the sovereign seal. You close the gates. You stop explaining yourself. You stop justifying your existence to others. You learn to govern from a place of deep, quiet, internal power. And when this protocol is complete, a fundamental shift happens, a total inversion. You're no longer just another cog in the massive machine of the external world. No, you become the ghost in the machine. The very system that was trying to consume you is now nothing more than an instrument for you to command.
And this is the final state, a place of quiet, profound, and absolutely unshakable wisdom. Your life's work, your logic, your reality, it's all contained, it's all protected, it's finalized. The archive is sealed.
So, the final question, it's really for you. That clock is ticking. This audit of your own personal closure, it isn't just some abstract philosophical idea. It's a real necessary process, and it has a deadline. So, is your audit complete?